I want to say God bless the people of Israel. They're under attack right now. That's because we show great weakness. This would not happen. The weakness that we've shown is unbelievable, and it would not have happened if we were in office. You know that. They know that. Everybody knows that. But America prays for Israel. We send our absolute support to everyone in harm's way.
President Trump sounding off on America's standing on the world stage as Iran launches a major attack against America's best ally in the Middle East, Israel.
Joining us now with more, Trump 2024 National Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt. Karoline, it's great to have you here. It was a really interesting moment for the president to showcase what he would have done, what would not have happened had he been president. The crowd seems to be eating it up, but tell us more about what his thoughts are on this particular very dangerous situation in the Middle East.
President Trump was made aware of the attack on Israel last night on our way to his rally in Pennsylvania, and he made it a priority to ensure that those remarks were at the top of his speech, to express 100% support for Israel. And as he expressed last night in Pennsylvania to a massive crowd of people that were on their feet clapping and cheering, is that the sad truth is this would have never happened to Israel if President Trump were still in the White House. Just a few years ago, there was peace in the Middle East. President Trump got Arab nations to come to the table to negotiate peace deals with Israel that never spoke before he was the negotiator in chief. He signed historic sanctions on the Iranian regime, cutting off the neck of the Iranians. They had never been more weak, more broke. And just in a matter of a few years, Joe Biden has reversed all of President Trump's very effective policies. And now they have been emboldened. And we've seen that aggression. The world is in chaos right now because of Joe Biden's weakness. And it just shows how petty and ridiculous this trial that we have starting in New York is tomorrow. When the world is at war, when our border is under invasion by terrorists and criminals, when inflation is increasing, the Democrats and Joe Biden are focused on prosecuting the former president of the United States.
We're going to get to that trial in just one moment, but how do you reverse that reversal? So the president were to win, how do you put the chaos back in the bottle in the Middle East?
It starts on day one. When President Trump walks into the Oval Office, the world is going to know that we have a strong commander-in-chief that is going to put America first, that is going to lead through an approach of peace through strength. He will slap sanctions back on the Iranian regime. A bloodthirsty terrorist in the Middle East like Soleimani will once again be gunned down. Russia's invasion of Ukraine will end. President Trump has promised to end that war in 24 hours. And China will no longer be promising to take Taiwan. Our adversaries will be deterred just by the fact that we will have a strong commander-in-chief and a rebuilding of our military like we saw in President Trump's first term. Well, the nation traded away, low inflation and world peace for no more mean tweets.
Yeah, I know.
Hope they're happy with their trade. Let's get to the trial, because your point is well taken, that this is what will commandeer much of President Trump's, if not attention, his time over the coming week. He said the other night that he will testify. I'm sure his attorneys will also provide feedback on whether or not that will be the case. But what do you expect this week from President Trump? We expect him to fight for truth like he always does. And what is taking place in this city this week is a travesty of justice. It's an unprecedented time in which we have the sitting president of the United States and Joe Biden weaponizing the justice system against his political opponent. This is what happens in third world banana republics, not here in the United States of America. And this case is a Biden trial at the behest of a far-left district attorney in Alvin Bragg, who has spent more time prosecuting President Trump than the violent criminals who are running free in the streets of New York right now. And the case is being overseen by a partisan judge. Judge Merchan is a partisan Democrat. He has donated money to Joe Biden's campaign. How can you honestly oversee a trial against a presidential candidate when you yourself support that candidate's opposition? It is election interference, and the American people see that. President Trump will continue to fight for truth. Now, they don't want him to do that. They're politically persecuting him, and then they're also gagging him. They want to take away his First Amendment right because they know he exposes the truth about the corruption and the corrupt actors who are leading this case, and it starts with Joe Biden.
Yeah, it is election interference. I think the American people see that. What I think is interesting is that I'm watching him on the screen right here, strong, coming up to the stage, making a strong statement. on the situation with Israel and Iran. And I think about Joe Biden. Like, could Joe Biden, with the trial looming and all the persecution that Donald Trump is facing and what he has to prepare for the next day, could he handle a late night rally like this? I mean, it's really, there's so many issues, what you brought up, Will, but there are so many ways that we can see one president versus the other, including the economy only 4 years ago, record-breaking.
That's right. The Americans have never had a stronger contrast than the one they will have on the ballot before them on November the 5th. We had a secure border. Now we have a wide open border. We had peace around the world. Now we have chaos. We are on the brink of World War III because of Joe Biden's weakness. And this trial this week and in the coming weeks is going to backfire on the Democrats, just like all of the Biden trials have. Our campaign has never been stronger. President Trump has never been in a stronger position to win. He is tough. He is tenacious. We will continue to fight for truth in the courtroom and to win the votes of Americans on the campaign trail. And they want to confine him to a courtroom. But unfortunately for them, President Trump has a big, beautiful plane that we will continue to use to fly around this country and earn votes. He has the power of Truth Social to spread truth to the American public. Our fundraising is exploding. And when you go to rallies like the one we did in Pennsylvania last night, there has never been more energy, more spirit, more love from the grassroots voters of this great country. So we'll continue to fight every step of the way.
Yeah, and to your point, Rachel, last night there was only one president that gave a live statement, and it wasn't Joe Biden.
We're still waiting to hear from Biden.
Exactly. All right, Karoline Leavitt, thank you so much for being.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.